Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Slick Talk. I'm your host, Joe. Do you know in chiropractor offices, I don't know if most of you go to the chiropractor. I tend to go when something really terrible comes up. Otherwise, I don't go in there too often. But I always remember this one time when I was younger. I walked into the chiropractor's office and they had a poster and it had a caricature of someone with really terrible back pain, and it said back pain, the silent killer. For some reason, I don't know, that's always stuck with me, but there's certainly more than one silent killer out there. And for engines, that tends to be coolant contamination. And coolant contamination is something that obviously we never want to find. We've talked about it before in previous episodes of this podcast, but at the end of the day, oil analysis can be an invaluable tool in finding a coolant leak, maybe before the customer knows that they have one. Before we dig right into the topic, though, I wanted to give you all a little bit of a timestamp on this episode. We're recording this episode on March 26th, 2020. Now, that means that we, like the rest of the world, are adapting to the impacts of COVID-19. But with that being said, we are still offering our services. We're still able to take your samples from whatever you've got, whether that be a car, transmission, airplane. If you have something where oil is vital to its operation, we're still here. We're still able to help out. We're still able to hopefully send the good news. And speaking of good news, we had exactly that for a customer. Goes by the name of Ryan, and he was sending in the first sample from his BMW M3. And on the slip, Ryan didn't mention any issues that he was looking for. He didn't know of anything that was particularly wrong. As far as we know, this was just a baseline sample from his M3, just getting his oil analysis program started. So we were just going to give him the general lay of the land. But we did see a couple things that really caught our attention and we want to highlight in the report. Those were two elements, potassium and sodium. If you are a veteran of oil analysis, if you have even just listened to our coolant episode, then you already know that potassium and sodium are a couple elements that we use to look for coolant contamination. And in this case, they really stood out because A, we're talking about a gasoline engine oil sample here. Gasoline engine oils do not use potassium. And you're not going to get potassium from a logical source, really. There are some additives that use it, like Revex and Arch Oil. But those are going to be used primarily by diesel engine owners. It's really a rare day that we would find one being used in a gasoline engine. So potassium really only has a logical source of coolant for this customer. Now we want to change gears and talk about sodium. Gasoline engine oils, there are some that use sodium, but this customer wasn't running an oil that uses it. So we had two pretty clear identifiers of coolant contamination, but that's not where the story ends. Sure, we did find it, but we also found a lot of other things too. We found healthy wear levels, really good wear levels compared to averages. Really impressive engine overall. So this customer had gone 17,000 kilometers on the oil, still had wear levels that were really close to what averages show as typical, and here's why that's impressive. The average interval for this BMW engine, specifically the S55 B30, is just 7,900 kilometers. The customer is going well beyond that, still winding up with some excellent wear levels. So that is really huge because yes, we did find coolant contamination, but the engine is wearing like a champ. So that means that things are not too far gone from a wear perspective. When we find a really bad coolant leak and we find a lot of severe engine wear to go along with it, that just doesn't bode well as far as the prospects for saving this engine. It doesn't tell us that we're going to be able to, just manage the situation, or sure, things might be okay if you do this or that. In this case, we had a really good, healthy engine that just looked like it had recently sprouted a coolant leak. So, with that, the customer had a place to go from there apart from just tearing into the engine. And that customer reached out to us and gave us some more details after getting his report. He mentioned he was able to talk to the dealership about doing a leak test of the cooling system. And after doing that, they were able to identify the exact problem, which was a small leak in the intercooler liquid cooling system. Now, from there, the customer was able to luckily use a warranty claim, really helping, obviously, with the cost of repairs. And really, it's hard to find a better illustration of the value of used oil analysis. This was a small leak. It was something that's probably not going to manifest as noticeable coolant loss until things are really too far gone. You're also probably not going to see things like a odd appearance of the oil itself, a milkshake color. And that's why sometimes it's hard, when you're talking to folks who haven't familiarized themselves with analysis yet, what the tests mean, why it matters that we can measure elements and parts per million. So often analysts will have conversations with customers, and it's a common refrain to hear, well, I always just can tell, the condition of my oil just by looking at it. I can see when it's a certain color. I mean, yes, indeed, a visual appearance can be really indicative, but often that's when problems are advanced. This customer hadn't reported an unusual color of the oil and hadn't reported noticeable coolant loss. And we're able to find these problems early on when you still have an engine that's in good shape. He also still had oil that was in good physical condition. We're talking about a normal viscosity. We're talking about insolubles that are low, and generally you'll find a lot of them if the oil is rapidly oxidized and, turning the oil abrasive and so on and so forth. So again, we want to give a shout out to our friend Ryan, who was so kind to not only offer up this report to be featured on Slick Talk, but also following up with us and letting us know the end to the story. Folks so often will send a sample in. It's like ships passing in the night. We might not hear back from them. We might not know what they ever really wanted to do with analysis, but it's always fun when we get to hear back, especially when we're able to help people out catching problems early on. So with that, if you want to have a report of yours featured on the show, which we highly encourage you to send those in, reports that you think were really useful to your maintenance, to how you're taking care of your vehicle, aircraft, so on and so forth, please do get in touch. And ways you can do that, send us an email, bstone@blackstone-labs.com. You can also contact us on our social media pages. We're on both Instagram and Facebook. You can find us easily just by searching for Blackstone Laboratories, or even just give us a call. We're always happy to talk to you. 260-744-2380. And last but not least, whatever podcast app you're listening on, be that Apple Podcasts, Google, whatever you have, don't forget to click subscribe. And if you can, give us some feedback, either text review or star rating. Slick Talk is still very much in its infancy. We're getting the ball rolling. We love the feedback we've gotten so far, but in order to grow this show, increase connection, and really unlock the potential of what this show can be, that really depends on feedback and hearing what you guys like, what topics you want to be featured, and especially as in today's case, having reports where you can speak to how it's been useful to you, how used oil analysis has aided in your maintenance. That's a big part of building this show, of improving it. So please do reach out. We always like to hear from you. And that wraps up today's topic. We hope this show has been a nice break from the news cycle, a nice break from anxiety, statistics, general worries and concern. We're happy that throughout this time, we're still able to send you reports, let you know how well you're taking care of your engine, let you know how well your maintenance plan is working. We strive to continue to be a source of positivity, and we'll be back with you soon. So stay tuned, and thanks for listening. We're just putting a bow on it here, Kyle.